Could this be Kyle Larson's last Indianapolis 500? We'll have to talk about that here in just a second. We got another Indy 500 related story as well, and it involves Katherine Legge and the fact that Katherine Legge will not be in the Indianapolis 500 this year. She won't even attempt to qualify. She and her sponsor are headed to NASCAR. So we'll talk about that. And of course, because we're leading with Kyle Larson, it is indeed the Kyle Larson video. But you only get the shouting if he wins the Indy 500, which apparently he only has one more opportunity to do. Going to be doing a stream on Sunday, live and public during the Long Beach Grand Prix. That'll be 4:30 Eastern time. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to stream the broadcast of the race, but if you want to hear my commentary, my thoughts throughout the race, this channel is the place to be. So tune in on Sunday to hear my thoughts live on the Long Beach Grand Prix. All right, let's get into it. Katherine Legge. We've been talking about this for a while, and whether or not there would be a 35th entry into this year's Indianapolis 500, and that answer is now no. And it was a long, complicated process with Katherine Legge. She had almost everything she needed to go racing at the Indianapolis 500. She had a Honda engine secured. She had, obviously, the sponsorship with Elf. She had a team willing to run her. That was Brian Herta Autosport. But what she didn't have, and it's hard to believe, considering what I always complain about, they could not find an updated Dallara DW12 chassis. Hard to believe that that's the thing that ultimately kept her out of the Indianapolis 500, considering how long ago 2012 was. And it's a more complicated issue than that. Actually, there were chassis available. One of those chassis ultimately was purchased by another team specifically to prevent Katherine Legge from putting this entry together. Some other chassis are held by other teams, and they were unwilling to lease them to Katherine Legge. And that's where we ultimately end up, is thankfully we have 34. We will have a bump because of the fact that Honda was willing to provide one, not only to Katherine Legge, but also to Takuma Sato. And the fact that, and shout out to them, shout out to Rahal Lennerman Lanigan Racing, a team that has been part of the bump day drama for so long, willing to take a risk and still enter a fourth car and put us over that 33 car threshold in order to run Takuma Sato. So we will have a bump day. We will have one car going home from the Indianapolis 500 this year, but we could have had a much more exciting bump day, and that has not happened. This is the management team, I believe, that represents Katherine Legge or represents the Elf sponsorship. Well, would represent them both, I guess, in this case. We're expanding and pivoting our Indy 500 Katherine Legge program with a multi-race program in NASCAR for 2025 with our partners at Elf Cosmetics. This will involve the Cup Series as well as Xfinity. There was a big article in People magazine that had almost nothing to do with IndyCar or the fact that they're kind of pivoting away from the Indianapolis 500. But that is indeed what's happening. And if you remember back to last year, the Elf Cosmetics activation around Katherine Legge's program last year was extremely successful at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Very important as well, that activation with the female demographic. Obviously, makeup is not something that I'm super duper familiar with. I actually had to ask my sister and my sister-in-law and my mom. I was like, hey guys, what is this Elf Cosmetics? Is it a big deal? And I ended up finding out, as I'm sure many of you who actually use the product know, this was one of the very few sponsorships that you could go into a Walmart or a Target and actually purchase. This was B2C. And you still go around the city of Indianapolis, and I still see the bumper stickers. Drive like a girl with the Elf sponsored IndyCar on the back. This was a huge activation for the female demographic of IndyCar, something that supposedly they want to grow. And I'm struggling when I see this and I see the sponsorship driver combination in NASCAR, and it's not an IndyCar. And I just wonder, because let's put the shoe on the other foot, right? Let's say that this sponsorship package might have happened for the Daytona 500, and there was trouble sourcing a car, sourcing a chassis. You had all the other prerequisites checked. You just needed a chassis. And let's say in NASCAR's case, IndyCar was knocking on the door saying, hey, we can get you what you need. We can get you what you need. Come over here. Is there a scenario where NASCAR doesn't step in and make that happen? Right? Grease the skids, find a chassis, make a match somewhere with a team to make it happen, to not lose a sponsor to a rival series. I don't know. There's some questions about this that seriously need an answer. Because what I'm looking at here is a sponsor that was marketing to a very, very key demographic, especially in the modern world, and a key demographic that IndyCar actively chases constantly, to their detriment in some ways. And you lose a B2C sponsor to NASCAR, and you lose an entry for the Indy 500. That's a rough one. There's no doubt about it. It's hard to spin that one as a positive. It's disappointing, and I get it. Look, let's play devil's advocate here for a second. Katherine Legge definitely not been one of the standout drivers in terms of performance at the Indianapolis 500 or in the NASCAR Cup Series or wherever. But that's why we have Bump Day. And it was something I talked about on Unverified. And my defense ultimately is that the bumping process at the Indianapolis 500 is supposed to weed out the drivers and teams that are not prepared to go 500 miles. And Katherine Legge, to her credit, has qualified for the 500 when there has been a question of whether or not she would qualify or not. I mean, least we forget, in the year that Rahal had 3 of their 4 cars in the bottom row shootout, hers was the only one that wasn't. I don't know. That's rough. I'm very disappointed. I'll put it that way. And you just hate to see this happen, but it's happened. And so we move on. Hey, let's talk about that pipeline going at least the opposite direction for one more year. A NASCAR driver who has an incredibly strong brand coming to the Indianapolis 500, but unfortunately, it sounds like, at least for now, this is the last year for Kyle Larson at the Indy 500. A clip that I saw this morning from the Dale Jr. download, Dirty Mo Media. Check out the entire podcast. I mean, Dale Jr. and the crew over there do a fantastic job. But I wanted to watch this clip with you guys and kind of react to it because it's quite interesting.
How many of these do you want to do?
If last year had gone smooth, maybe I wouldn't be doing this year. But last year didn't go exactly how we all planned, so I really wanted to do this year. So
that's bull. Because
thank you, Dale.
If I'm a fan, I'm gonna be torn to pull for you to have a good result, because I want you to go back and do it again. But if you have a good result, you might not.
I would like to do it again someday, where I'm
I think the only way
fully committed mentally. Yeah. I can't fully commit to Indy in the middle of our NASCAR Cup Series schedule and points chasing and all the other stuff that I have going on. But then I look at it, I'm like, well, I'm 32. I'll be going on 33.
Yeah. I retired, I was 48, right?
48? Damn.
And I finished third, I was 47, and I won when I was 38.
Okay, so then maybe. I got time, I guess. Yeah. So we'll revisit this in 15 years maybe, but I don't think there's plans for next year currently. So
this is a 2-year deal.
Yeah, so make it good this time.
Oof. Oh, I don't like that. Kyle Larson has been incredibly important to the race the last couple of years. In fact, if you think about it, he did a press conference in 23, and obviously they announced the program around that time. So really the last 3 years of the Indy 500, Kyle Larson's been a huge part of it. I will say this. Maybe he didn't focus 100% on the Indy 500 last year, but they definitely prioritized it last year, as evidenced by the fact that they finished the race in Indy rather than fly priority to Charlotte. But I think NASCAR didn't take that all too well, as evidenced by the fact that there was obviously a big hubbub about whether or not Kyle Larson would get a waiver to join the NASCAR playoffs or not last year. And this year, in fact, a press conference at the end of last year, Hendrick Motorsports and Kyle Larson made it very, very, very clear that they're going to prioritize NASCAR this year. I hope that that what Kyle Larson is saying here is not true. Even if he can't give Indy 100%, I think 80% of Kyle Larson is worth a hell of a lot to the Indianapolis 500. I would say it's a great negotiating tactic if you don't have a contract for the Indy 500 next year. You're at the end of your 2-year deal, and you're saying on one of the biggest podcasts in racing that, well, I don't know if I would do it next year. Maybe someday. It's a good negotiating tactic for sure. If you're trying to get a better deal or a bigger deal. But Kyle Larson is also someone who's pretty brutally honest most of the time. And I do believe, unfortunately, that Kyle Larson's probably won't do the Indy 500 in 2026 and beyond. And I hope that's not the case, like I said. But if you have any desire, I just say this as we near a potential sellout of the Indy 500. If you want to see Kyle Larson in an IndyCar in person, this is the year to do it. For sure. Do it. Make a priority of it because you don't know if he's going to come back next year. But I sure hope he does. And I sure hope it's not 15 years. I get that Tony Kanaan, kind of rightfully so, points out that you can be competitive at an elder age at the Indianapolis 500 if you have the talent, and Kyle Larson certainly has the talent. But I think we kind of saw this with Fernando Alonso a little bit and some other drivers who have tried the Indy 500. I think it takes 2 or 3 years to really be a contender to win it. I think we all knew going into last year, even though Kyle Larson seems to indicate that he might not have come back if things had gone well last year. I always knew that Kyle Larson was going to have a couple of rocks in that road to the Indianapolis 500. Yes, he was the fastest rookie last year. He led some laps on pit strategy. He was running in the lead pack for most of the day, but ultimately there was a couple of restarts where he struggled. Obviously, he had a pit lane speeding penalty towards the end of the race. So there are some things that Kyle Larson is going to need to clean up with the Indianapolis 500. And who knows how much longer his NASCAR career is going to last. Again, I'm biased. My opinion would be that if you're going to do the Indy 500, you should commit fully to it, and NASCAR should definitely be the secondary part of your month of May, in my opinion. If you're doing the 500, that's what it should be about. Because I think Kyle Larson does have absolutely the talent to win it, but at the end of the day, very, very few rookies win the Indianapolis 500. Very, very few drivers in their second Indianapolis 500 win it. Look at Tony Kanaan or look at Joseph Newgarden. It took them almost 13 years to win the Indianapolis 500 for the first time. So if Kyle wants to win it, he's going to have to keep coming back. And taking a 15-year break is probably not the best thing to accomplish that goal. But I want to see him come back as many years as he can, and of course, as he wants to. We'll definitely take you, Kyle, for sure. We appreciate you running the 500. Looking forward to covering him very soon at the Open Test 2 weeks from today, actually. Well, of course, the first day is scheduled for Wednesday. Second day will be Thursday. We hope we get 2 days in. We hope it's not weather delayed, but it usually is. So who knows? We might have 2 days of coverage. We might not 2 weeks from now. But you should be subscribed if you care about IndyCar, the Indianapolis 500, right down there. I'm sure you've already written a comment. So subscribe, leave a like on the video, and we'll see you in the next video.